Hey everyone, George Christie here with Wine Industry Network. Welcome to another episode of the Win Educational Webinar Series. Today's session is sponsored by Wineglass Marketing. It's titled Integrated Marketing, Why You're Leaving Money on the Table. We've got two terrific speakers. We've got Susan DeMatei, who is the president of Wineglass Marketing, and she's going to be joined by Jennie Gilbert, who is the founder at RedChirp. Now, for those of you that have watched our webinars before, this is going to sound familiar. But our goal is to always make these as interactive and as engaging as possible. And so to that point, we always pre-record our sessions a couple of days in advance. We do that for quality purposes as well. Mainly we do it is so that, in this particular case, Jennie and Susan, they're going to be watching the broadcast right along with you are. They're going to be in the chat room. So as questions come to you while you're watching their presentation, you can go ahead and submit those questions in the chat room, and Jennie and or Susan will pick them off as they come in. So you don't need to wait till the very end. Thank you again for joining us. Thank you to Wineglass Marketing for sponsoring. Obviously, thank you, Jennie and Susan, for being with us and being part of this broadcast. And I think that about covers it. I'm going to kick it off to Susan now. Susan, take it away.
Thank you all very much for your interest and giving us an hour out of your day. We will try very hard not to disappoint you and give you some good information that you can go back with and sell lots of wine, or corks or labels or glass or whatever you sell. If you've been reading anything in the business press in the past few years, it is all about multi-channel marketing, or how you coordinate your messages together across different channels. Those of you who know me know that I really like data. So at Wineglass Marketing, we've been doing some testing. And today I have some very interesting case studies to show you why, if you're not integrating your marketing channels, you're going to leave money on the table. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm Susan DeMatei. I am the founder of Wineglass Marketing. We are a coordinated and integrated marketing firm in Napa Valley, and we specialize in the wine and spirits industry. And who I have with me today is very special guest, Jennie Gilbert. She is the founder of RedChirp, which is a fantastic texting platform. Hey, Jennie.
Hi, Susan. I'm so excited to be here today and presenting with you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Fantastic. All right, so let's sit back and relax, and Jennie and I are going to take control of your monitors for the next 50 minutes or so. Here's what we have in store for you. First, we're going to go through the criteria of what an integrated marketing campaign is. And we're going to move then right into the 10 benefits of combining your marketing channels. To prove what we're saying, I'll then walk you through some case studies and share the results. Jennie will then join in with how to layer in texting to your existing campaigns, and she's going to share some best practices. And then finally, we're going to wrap it all up with some steps that you can take right now to see better returns. So let's go ahead and dive in. What is integrated marketing? What constitutes an integrated marketing campaign? Well, simply put, it's when you combine your different channels of marketing together to tell a single story. The idea is that it's the sum of the parts now become greater than the whole through this interdisciplinary approach. Now, this isn't a new idea. It's just become a lot more complicated now. When I started at ad agencies in the early 90s, there was print, broadcast, outdoor, and direct mail. So having an integrated campaign was not that hard. Now, not only do we have a whole bunch of new digital channels like email and social media, but traditional channels are also bifurcated with streaming services and digital magazines. There's even an emerging service type called DSPs, or demand-side platforms, that has cropped up to help us manage all of these different channels. In fact, a recent study from Demand Metrics shows 54% of marketers always use 3 or 4 channels for their campaigns. 23% typically use 5 channels, and 14% use between 6 and 9 different channels per campaign. This study anecdotally went on to say that the most popular channel among marketers was email, with 90% of respondents saying that they use email in their marketing. And it was followed by social media with 84%. And the third most common was events like webinars, trade shows, and virtual events at 71%. So let's boil this down. What constitutes an integrated campaign? Well, you have to have a consistent company presence in the form of a logo. Now, this seems very obvious, but it is worth stating because lots of wine brands have different confusing hierarchies with different types of labels and branding. You also need to have some design consistencies like fonts and colors. Typically, the image style and the subject matter of the or setting of the ad is similar or reminiscent of each other. There also should be a singular message. For instance, progressive saves you money, something that is said again and again and again. And then finally, the big one, it has to be on multiple channels. Interestingly, although both popular TV campaigns that have been going on for years, only one of these two that I'm showing here is an integrated campaign. Do you know which one? It's Flo from Progressive. The company hired Stephanie Courtney, who plays Flo, in 2008. And since then, we've seen Flo and her price guarantee on TV ads, print ads, billboards, transit ads, and social media. Milana Vantrube appeared first as Lily in the AT&T commercials in 2013, but she is only in their broadcast ads. So while the AT&T commercials are successful in a decade-long commercial and campaign, they are not an integrated campaign. Okay, enough trivia. Let's go back to the criteria. We mentioned logos. Having a consistent logo alone doesn't make something integrated. It's just a badge for the company. One of the most trusted brands in the world, actually, is Coca-Cola, and they haven't changed their logo for 128 years. But that doesn't mean that everything Coca-Cola has ever done has been an integrated campaign. An example of an integrated campaign for Coca-Cola would be the Polar Bears campaign. Coca-Cola first featured a polar bear in a French print ad in 1922, with a bear squirting a cola from a bottle into the mouth of a thirsty sun. It's in the middle there, and to me, it looks like the sun is throwing up into the bottle, but hey, it was 1922, so maybe that's what they did. Since then, these polar bears have occasionally appeared in ads, but it wasn't used for a coordinated campaign until 1993. And since then, it's been in 3 integrated campaigns worldwide. It is still being used today. So to recap, multiple channels are important, and it's more than just slapping a logo on your campaign. So integrated campaigns have to be just repetition, right? No. Repetition is just frequency. It doesn't inspire people. It actually annoys them. Consistency is what you need in marketing. If you think about it, let's just say you have an employee or a colleague that comes to meetings and always says the same thing. He has the same idea and he brings it up again and again and again. After about the 3rd or 4th time you've heard this idea, you either stop inviting him to the meetings or you just tune him out. But let's say you have another employee who is consistently creative and thinks out of the box, and someone else who is consistently skeptical and a devil's advocate and really good at vetting things. You begin to rely on that consistency. And when you need to create a brainstorm, you invite the person who has been consistently creative. And when you need to evaluate a proposal, you bring in your skeptic. It's the same thing with brands. Consistency teaches us what that company is good for and stands for, and what you can rely on them as a consumer to provide. Also, frequency without consistency is just chaos. But this is how a lot of people market today. Every marketing campaign is a one-off. Every email is a new idea. Every social post is a random thing that happened in the tasting room that day. You have a wine, you need to sell it, you come up with a copy, and boom, your ad's done and you move on. The problem with this type of approach is that you get very confused, and your consumer has a very hard time finding the one message you're trying to get across. So now let's talk about the benefits of integrated marketing and why you should really care. First thing that's handy about integrated marketing channels is that not every channel is for every phase of the customer lifecycle. So here we have our classic marketing funnel, right? Marketing 101. We go from awareness to familiarity to consideration to purchase and then loyalty. Well, you're not going to be able to get awareness with texting, for instance, because you don't have their phone number. No, you're going to use things like Google ads or print ads for awareness. So the concept here is that not every phase has all the channels in it, and there are different channels that are good to accomplish the goals in each quadrant. So let's just say you have an integrated campaign and you include, say, print ads, social media ads, and email. Then you're able to target your customers no matter where they are in their relationship with you with a singular message. The calls to action will change, but the message will remain consistent. Another reason is we're all different. We all have our habits and we all shop and browse differently. I may love text but hate email. And unless you're doing some pretty detailed notes on all your customers, you probably don't know what their preferred channels are. This is why dividing up your channels is a good choice. Not only are you more likely to reach your target, but your targets will appreciate the variety. We know this because overwhelmingly people shop on more than one channel. So typically the more channels, the merrier. But what if you have different targets? What if you're, say, a winemaking software and you have to reach the C-level decision maker who likes to communicate through email, and then the operation manager who prefers direct mail, and the winery staff member where they're on their cell phone all the time because they're in the winery and they're never at their desk, and then maybe the salespeople who are always at trade shows? Well, integrating your marketing now allows you to, again, coordinate your message to multiple targets at the same time. Number 4, besides the target benefits, let's look at the benefits to your marketing message. In 1885, a researcher named Ebbinghaus produced a paper on memory in which he described experiments that he conducted on himself, describing the process of learning and forgetting. Ebbinghaus made several findings that are still relevant and quoted to this day. First, and arguably his most famous finding, was the forgetting curve. The forgetting curve describes the exponential loss of information that one has just learned. He also identifies the effect of recency and repetition in recall. And you can see here in the chart, the top level there is 100% recall. So you absolutely know it. And the bottom is 100% forgetfulness. You completely lost it. A single message is almost completely forgotten within a matter of days. But by the 4th reminder, there is a 90% recall. A byproduct of having all of these channels to choose from is that we're overloaded with information, and we are immediately moving on to something else. This impermanence has been known and studied for a while at the big ad agencies. And the only thing really to combat this constant need for new content is to consistently deliver new content. But like our birds a few slides ago, if you randomly pop off ideas and one-off messages, there is 100% guarantee that they're going to be forgotten. The best strategy here is to have 2 to 3 consistent themes of messaging and integrate them into everything you do. Only in that way will you have a chance to get your message across to people. Remember our example of the employees who were consistent in delivering either creative ideas or thoughtful skepticism? Well, consistency builds trust. Why? You know what to expect. And it's interesting, there's even been studies that show how repetition alone can actually build trust, even if the information is false, which is why the internet is so dangerous, because if you say it enough time, it just becomes true. And why do we care about trust? We care about trust because our customers care about trust. They buy brands that they trust. One of the most important findings from research is the fact that brand trust is one of the biggest considerations for consumers when making a purchase. In fact, 81% say that the ability to trust that a brand will do the right thing can be a deciding factor in a purchase. And what's really important here, trust is not about just your products. It's not about your wine. It's about your company and your employees. When you have a coordinated message, you become reliable. And when you're reliable and that message is showing what your companies and your employees believe, that becomes transparency. And as you can see here, the more layers of trust you can deliver, the highest likelihood you will have loyal and repeat customers. Okay, enough psychology. Let's get down to real tangible benefits. Coordinating marketing will save you money. So let's just say you're doing a March Madness campaign like we are here. When you coordinate vendors and your efforts, then you can have one graphic that you simply resize for multiple areas. You only write copy once, and then you use it again on different social channels and your email and your landing page. Not only do you save the human cost of time, but the very real actual cost of assets are saved when you coordinate. Okay, bringing it home now with the last two big benefits. Coordination, as we saw, creates trust and loyalty, which in turn means that companies with coordinated channel marketing have more customer engagement than companies that are consistently churning out one-off messages. Think about it, this makes sense. If you never know what to expect from a brand, you're not very likely to share it or comment on it or like it, because the next day the brand could say something that you completely don't agree with. And last but not least, integrated marketing campaigns just perform better. They have better metrics and higher conversions. I had always heard a rule of thumb was to add a 10% lift for every channel that you added, but I really wanted to know this as a fact. And that's where we're going to get into our case studies. So let me show you two case studies here where we mathematically proved that integration performs better. This first case study is the launch of a new sparkling wine. We had 3 targets for this. The first one was the existing database, which we just had to announce that the winery that was known for still wine was now going to have a sparkling. The second was followers on social media, but people that weren't in the database yet. So we wanted to see if this new product could entice people who knew about the brand but hadn't purchased to buy. And then finally, we wanted to reach an entirely new audience with paid ads. So we went out and we targeted them with this new product, using it as an excuse for an introduction. We created a teaser campaign for about a week on social media, and we sent an email in which we also coordinated our launch with World Champagne Day. When we launched, we were very consistent with the messaging and the photography. We used lots of carousel ad placements and reels and highlighted the different call to actions depending on the target audience. To the existing database, we sent an email twice over a period of 5 days, and we created a custom landing page for everything. So everything was coordinated, and just the messaging and the call to action were tweaked depending on the audience and the channel. The results showed large increases in open, click-through, and conversion rates on the email. as well as increases in Instagram and Facebook engagement and click-through rate from their previous campaigns. The best news down here at the bottom was that 13% of all sales were from new people, which was a major point of this launch. With this client and others, we have since started to continue to think in terms of campaigns and themes rather than one-off ads and emails. So there is a test we did just for this webinar. Here we took a client with a large database and we divided it equally into 7 groups. Group A got an email only. Group B, we uploaded the mailing list to Meta and we targeted an ad only. And Group C got only text. Then we tried combinations of 2 channels. So D was email and Meta, E was email and text, and F was Meta and text. And then finally, Group G was our lucky winner, and they got all 3 channels. We had an equal number of randomly picked population for each group. We messaged the same product, offer, design, and call to action to each group. We drove them to all the same checkout and the same checkout experience. And using our checklist here, we made sure all of our graphics and messaging were the same. And the only thing we tested was the number of channels. As you can see here, the campaign was for Pinot Noir. We did a nice email for the email groups with some tasting note imagery, some quotes, and strong call to actions. This email was sent on February 17th of this year, and then a reminder was sent on February 21st to openers who had not purchased. The social media ads used the same imagery and some of the same copy, and it ran from February 17th to the 28th. The texting was sent once and included the same offer. The results were better than I had hoped. The groups that only got 1 channel on average had a conversion rate of 0.22. When you added in a second channel, that increased 27% to 0.28. But the group that had all 3 channels jumped to a 0.4% conversion, which was an 82% increase from just 1 channel. This has us really excited, and we're actually going to be testing different combinations to see if there's a top performer or best way to go about doing this in subsequent campaigns. But one thing I noticed in the data was how well texting did. By far, it was the most single successful channel. So I wanted to know more, and I wanted to get some best practices to bring to our clients. So I asked Jennie Gilbert from RedChirp, who partnered with us and Farniente on the test, to talk with us today. So Jennie, take it over from here.
Thank you, Susan. Well, I learned a lot from that and have some things to work on in our own business. But I'm very excited to jump in with some helpful advice about how to layer texting into your integrated marketing campaigns. Today, I'm going to talk about practical tips. How do you choose the right people to send your text to? How to compose the most effective text message. A little bonus about how including multiple paths to purchase can really increase the efficacy of your text. We're also going to talk about how to execute your text campaign, analyze the results, and some key takeaways from the really interesting case study we did together with Farniente. Let's get started. Okay, for so many things, but especially when choosing the recipients for your text message, I always like to point out that although text and emails share some similarities and work great together, they're not the same thing. And you don't necessarily want to send them to the same people. When you're building the audience for your text campaign, you'll want to consider some of the unique consent requirements for text messaging. Now, I'm not a lawyer and I can't provide you with legal advice, but this is how I think about consent and choosing the right audience for my text messages. First, compliance. The main federal law that applies to text messaging is called the TCPA. The TCPA has a really interesting carve out, and it says that businesses absolutely can call or text consumers with unsolicited promotions, as long as they can meet a few requirements. Most notably, these three. Your consumer actually gave you their phone number willingly. So you didn't go buy a whole list of phone numbers and start texting them. Then they want you to have an existing business relationship. That can be a pretty high hurdle for many businesses. But for wineries, you're often in a great spot. Membership is a really solid example. And then obviously, the further you get away from club membership, maybe the more gray that might become. And then third is to include opt-out instructions, which could be as simple as text stop to opt out. After considering the law and consent, I also like to think about the carrier regulations. AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, they all belong to this organization called the CTIA, and they publish guidelines for how they want businesses to message on their networks. And although these are just guidelines, they're not laws, they're still important because we rely on these carriers to deliver messages to consumers that are using them. They have some higher standards than the TCPA. The carriers would like you to have express written consent when sending promotional texts. For informational texts, they relax that. They'd like you to have consent, but it doesn't have to be in writing. And again, even though these aren't laws, I still encourage businesses to know these and to strive for them. It reduces your risk overall, and it also future-proofs you because texting as a medium is becoming more regulated all the time. So having a top-notch consent opt-in list for texting is something every business should be planning for and executing a strategy on. In addition to the law and the carrier regulations, you'll want to think about the customer experience. Just because you can text someone doesn't mean you necessarily should. Texts get noticed, they are intrusive. So you'll want to keep your text communications to very important things and make sure you don't overdo it. And then, no stranger to you in the alcohol industry, there are extra regulations when you're texting about alcohol. I could spend an entire webinar talking about those. So I will leave you with my best suggestion. Make sure you're working with a platform that understands and specializes in those. There's a lot of nitpicky details in the background that make a huge difference in whether your messages will be delivered and your carrier and your campaigns approved by the carrier. Okay, so those are some general best practices. How did we choose the recipients for this awesome case study with Farniente? We took the original 7 groups that were filtered to be, pretty big and diverse, and we narrowed those. So for the 4 groups that were getting text, we, within the original groups, narrowed that down to people who had purchased that particular Pinot or a previous vintage within the last 12 months. And then, of course, we had to have a valid mobile number in order to text them. That worked out to being about 2,800 customers across the 4 groups. And I'd like to give a shout out to Enalytics, the wonderful folks there. That program really helped Farniente be able to quickly identify which exact consumers purchased that wine within that specific time period. All right, now that you know how we chose our recipients and some best practices around that, let's talk about composing your text message to try to make it as effective as possible. Step number 1, no matter what, make sure that in the very first line, you are identifying who you are. If you put it at the bottom, they may not ever get there. So for Farniente's case study, they chose to do it pretty informally. They started their message with, "Hi, first name. This is Erica with Farniente." Okay, once you introduce yourself, step number 2, tell them why you're texting. In Farniente's example, they wrote, "I know you've enjoyed this particular wine. We're almost sold out of the 21, and the 22 won't be released until later this year." I particularly love how they fulfilled the second best practice, because in addition to just telling them why they're texting them, They actually established their business case for having an existing business relationship right in the text. Hey, I'm texting you because I know you enjoyed this specific wine we make. And they created a sense of urgency, not just because you love this wine, but because it's running out and you have to take action quickly. All right, once you've introduced yourself and told them why you're texting, the next step is to make sure that you include a call to action. What would you like the consumer to do? And in the case of this particular case study, what's really interesting here is not only did they fulfill this best practice, but they went above and beyond, and they provided multiple calls to action, which ended up being really powerful. Let's look at each one of them. There were 3 calls to action, and the first was to self-serve by going online and buying yourself. You can buy online at this link. Now I'm going to take a moment and get on my little soapbox and talk a little bit about URLs in text messaging, because surprisingly, they're very different than URLs in email. First of all, unlike an email, you can't take a word and hyperlink it in a text. You can't say, click here to buy. The only way to get that text clickable is to include the full URL, including the HTTPS. That means that the link might be really long. In Farniente's case study, look how long this link is, because it's got UTM tracking information. That's huge. In a text message, it's going to take up a lot of space. This can lead people to want to use link shorteners like bit.ly or tinyURL, but absolutely, please, please, please avoid using any commercial link shorteners in your text messaging. They're fine in emails, but in text messages, they are a huge red flag to the carriers that this message might be spam or phishing. Some carriers like AT&T have gone so far as to publicly say, we will not deliver A to P, application to person texts, that include commercial link shorteners. I think in the real world, they do deliver some, but that's not a game you want to play. It's absolutely going to reduce the deliverability of your messages if you include commercial link shorteners. So what can you do? RedChirp does have a solution for this. We have our own way to shorten the links for you. So you put in the full link, and we're going to automatically shorten that to a domain name that we own for that purpose. We have a few of them, and we've already warmed up with the carriers and are highly trusted by them. You get to pick which one you like and then customize it for you. So in Farniente's case study, this really long URL that we put in the bulk message, when it actually got sent to the consumer, was shortened to something like farniente.textforwine / a few characters. In addition to being able to shorten that and brand it, it also allows us to track who's clicked on it. Okay, back to our calls to action. The first one, self-serve, go buy online. The second one, text back a keyword. Text back Pinot 3, Pinot 6, or Pinot 12 to order that many bottles. Now in RedChirp, you can have as many keywords as you'd like. They can be anything you'd like. You can turn them on and off. And one of my favorite parts of keywords is you can set it up so they automatically trigger a response. So in this case study, Farniente set it up. So if someone texts Pinot 6 back, RedChirp would automatically reply, wonderful. We'll get your order ready and ship it to your primary address on file. If you need a specific ship date, let us know. This allowed the consumer to get immediate validation that their request had been received, but the Farniente team could then go through and process those orders at their convenience. A little bit more about keywords. I love that you also get some really nice reporting in RedChirp. To get those reports, you just hop into your organization settings, and exactly where you make keywords, you can get a report for any of them. So you can click here to see everybody who texted back Pinot 12. And you'll see their name, when they did it, what they texted back, and the automated response. You can export this to Excel, and not only is it great for data and results, but it's also a good double check. So after you're done going through your text responses, you think you've processed every order, double check against this list to make sure you didn't miss one. So how did it actually work? In this case, it was hugely successful. 46 people texted back one of those keywords. That's how it broke out by which one. And in case anyone can do the math really fast, that's 378 bottles of wine just from the keywords. These were also very final sales. I did an additional analysis where I looked at the actual sales in their POS over the next several days and made sure that these keywords turned into a final sale. And they did. 45 of the 46 turned into a completed sale within the next few days. And that represented about 30% of all the sales from these texts. That's a really interesting stat. If you didn't include the keywords, would some of those people bought online? Probably. Would all of those people have purchased online? No way. So this is a beautiful way to increase the efficacy of your text messages by offering some options for people who are maybe a little less comfortable with e-commerce or a little lazier. I also love to see how much people just appreciate how easy Farniente made it. Nadia sent this text to me a few minutes after we sent the first one out. Customer wrote back, "This was the easiest wine order I've ever done with any company. Please continue to text me your specials on Pinot." Love that. Okay, so buy online, self-serve, text back a keyword. The third option they gave them is easy to overlook, but still powerful, or text back anything else and I can help you. Just by inviting that conversation, you're letting people know that you're there to serve them. And I talked to Erica after this. She absolutely talked to all kinds of consumers that didn't buy online and didn't use the keyword, but just texted back and forth with her, and she helped them place an order. All right, we've introduced ourselves, we've told them while we're texting, and we've given them calls to action. This next one is optional. It may not apply in every text that you compose, but if you do have any extra incentives, you might want to pop them in near the bottom. Just an extra reminder about why you want to take action. And then this one you'll want in every message. Make sure to end all your bulk texts with opt-out instructions. It can be kind of casual like this one. P.S. Don't want us to text you, just reply stop. So in addition to those very broad 5 best practices and how they specifically applied them in Farniente's case study, a few bonus tips when you're building your text. You want your text to be easy to read at a glance. And key to that is separating out the different pieces of information. To make sure they're separate, use double returns. Phone screens, they're small, and you're going to get a lot of returns naturally. So in order to really separate it, you're going to make sure that you have double returns between your different sections. Number 2, you want your text to be short, but don't sacrifice it being complete and the friendly or whatever tone it is you're trying to inspire. It doesn't have to be this short, but a good rule of thumb that I like to propose is that you shouldn't have to scroll to read your text. So that one we looked at for Farniente was in fact long, but even on the smallest phone in the market right now, an iPhone SE, it fit on the screen without scrolling. And then I would love to do some more research to know exactly how this plays out, but I have seen more casually that emojis really help establish the tone and make it seem as friendly as you'd like it to. All right, so now that we talked about how to compose the message, what do you do when it's time to send it? And I would like to thoroughly remind everyone, there's no text police standing over you, requiring that you send all your texts at one time. Feel free to break them up. In this case, they were already broken up for the 4 different groups for the case study, but still we took the largest of the 4 and broke it into 2 so that Erica could send the bulk message, handle the responses because people do reply, and then when she felt comfortable, send the next one. Again, I'd like to do more data about exact timing, but some rules of thumb: avoid too early in the morning. People are busy getting their kids to school and getting to work. And you want to avoid texting people too late at night. That's rude. A good cutoff is 8 p.m. on the East Coast. And remember that unlike emails, there are rate limitations for text messages. So most wineries would find themselves with a type of campaign where the carriers would allow 1 text per second to go out. So you want to not only think about when you're hitting send, but how many messages you're sending and approximately how long that's going to take. Okay, after you execute your text, what are some good ways to analyze the results? So for this case study, and for everything, I would recommend using RedChirp's order attribution feature. That is going to automatically help you connect your text to your sales, as long as you've integrated RedChirp with any one of the point of sales that you see up here on the screen. You can get to this report a variety of ways, but for each bulk message, you can go to that message and access the report just for the recipients of that message. It looks something like this. It tells you, okay, we sent this group E text to 394 recipients, and then these are all the sales that those particular recipients went on to make. You get to control the order proximity. So this, we only looked at the sales that happened in the 7 days of sending the text and after. We include when, who, the type that you have marked in your POS, the value, and the time since the message, as well as a link over to it, and you can export that to Excel. So what did we learn when we put this all together for the Farniente case study? We had 4 groups, and we attempted to send 2,824 texts and basically delivered all of them. We had about 30 that we couldn't deliver for one reason or another. From each of the groups, this is how many consumers went on to purchase, and the percentage of those, average of about 6%, and the total value. From these 4 groups of text, 2,800 customers, Farniente went on in the next few days to sell $81,000 worth of wine to these specific consumers. I also thought this data was interesting. These sales happened very fast, over half of them the same day, and over 3/4 of them 1 day or less. And a brief little cost analysis. I don't think it's fair to skip over the fact that it does cost money to send text messages. That's part of the reason there's less spam in the channel, because it is expensive to send. Now, RedChirp includes messages every month, but for the sake of this analysis, let's pretend every single one of these messages for Farniente was extra in addition to what's already included. In that case, Farniente would have spent about $83 on this text and earned a 976 times return. Or what they thought was really interesting is pay for all of RedChirp's subscription for the next 8 years from this one campaign. We had so much fun presenting what we found back to the folks at Farniente, and Nadia wanted me to share what she felt about this integrated marketing approach for the case study. She wrote, the integrated approach of this campaign showcased the lift that can be attained when you're sharing your message consistently across several communication channels. Giving our customers a myriad of ways to purchase enables us to provide the best service that suits their needs and communication preferences. And I'll leave you with the top 5 takeaways that I came away from this particular case study with. First, targeting the right consumers is really powerful. Including those multiple paths to purchase paid off big time. I'm absolutely convinced they would not have sold as much wine as they did if they only provided any one of those 3 or any 2. They all work together really well. When done well, customers love and appreciate the convenience of these type of promotions by text. And the sales are going to come in quickly. Responses are going to come in quickly from your text. So it is resource heavy. You want to make sure that your team is there and ready to respond when you send out your text messages. And absolutely don't forget your other channels. Although this was super exciting, and I personally just worked on the text part, it was really interesting to see that the other groups, the groups that didn't get any text at all, also bought wine. And don't forget that you can email a lot more people than you can text, and often very economically. So adding those on becomes gravy on top of, and the ability to reach an even wider net. I'd like to give a huge thank you to Susan and the team at Wineglass Marketing. Thank you for the opportunity to participate in this case study and this presentation, and to learn with you. It's very impressive watching your team, and a real joy to participate. And also thanks so much to Farniente, Nadia, Erica, Taylor. I really appreciated the time you spent to help prepare, execute, and review this case study together. It was an absolute delight. And I'll turn this back over to Susan for some parting thoughts from her as well.
We'll wrap up now with a few simple things that you can do right now to get better sales conversions for your marketing campaigns. The easiest thing to do is start small. Begin to coordinate your emails with your social, or have a matching landing page on your next campaign. But think to yourself, where is my customer going to go next? And how can I bring this campaign to that location to meet them? Using our checklist, start to think in terms of campaigns instead of, I just got to get this newsletter out. Here's an example of a club invite we did for Skinner. And we created a little reel for it to be used in social media and targeted to the club. It's just another way that we could bring this message home to their club database. If you feel you want to go to the next level, look at a third channel. Here we have ads and posts for Napa Humane. And we tied the same theme and the importance of spaying and neutering throughout into the newsletter, and then also a direct mail piece that we coordinated with the Napa shelter. We have about 4 key themes with Napa Humane, and we keep saying them again and again. We just say it in different ways with different graphics, but always coordinated to get the word out. So don't forget about some obvious connections. Don't forget about email and texting and phone. Play around with some different combinations. In no time, you'll see increases in your sales, and you'll be thinking of your marketing in a more programmatic approach. We want to thank you very much. Here is our contact information. If you want to talk to us or have any questions about what we presented today, we would love to hear from you. Thank you.